Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 35 of SuperSports, the review series for Gran Turismo's selection of exotic, as the name pretty obviously suggests, super sports cars, vehicles which nestle between sports cars, but at the same time aren't necessarily full-on supercars. And in this particular episode we're featuring a vehicle which some people would probably argue is more justified in being called a true supercar rather than a super sport. And as with some of these models that do sit on the fence to some degree between the two classes, I wouldn't necessarily strongly disagree with that. I would disagree with it, that's why I've put it in this series, but not necessarily strongly, because I can understand why people would claim that. But the vehicle is a hugely popular model, especially in real life, but also on the game. On the game, it's not really given the potential that it deserves in terms of straight line performance, particularly top speed, but it's the Ferrari 458 Italia. Possibly the most popular Ferrari since the year 2000 in terms of how much people like the car and how praised it is as an overall model. It's now, of course, kind of morphed into the 488, but the 458 itself is also a brilliant car. And it has a very interesting style of design where, personally, I'm not a huge fan of the 458 overall, but I do like the way it's designed, mostly with the detail. The overall design isn't what I would say is one of the best looking cars ever made. It's certainly a good looking car, but it wouldn't be in my top 10 best looking cars. But what I do like about the car is all the little details that go together to make the overall package, and I actually prefer the smaller details of this car rather than the overall look. And that may sound like a weird statement, but to explain what I mean by that, stuff that I really like about the 458 includes things like the small air outlets next to the headlights on the outer bodywork. I like that. That's a nice touch. It looks good on the car. I also like how the intakes on the top of the car leading to the engine almost look as if they are fabric that's kind of flowing over the rear window and encasing the back end of the car. I like that. It looks good. It's a good detail. It's just the overall package of everything together which I'm not overly hyped up about. I don't dislike the car, it's just not one of my favourites. In terms of what it's capable of though, the 458 is a good car on Gran Turismo. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the top speed's nowhere near what it deserves to be, given that this can be tuned up to 753 horsepower without even having a turbo. It deserves to be capable of more than it is. As it is, it struggles to pass 260 under its own power. And that's a shame, because this car deserves to be at least a 270 or 280 mile per hour machine. But for some reason, the Italian cars in particular on Gran Turismo, and also the British cars to some degree, but with the Italian cars it seems to be ironic that so many of them are considered to be among the best exotics you can get, while simultaneously having awful top speeds on the game. Think Lamborghini LP640, Gallardo 458, 599, Gran Turismo, you can go on. None of them virtually are as fast as they should be. That being said, over 250 miles per hour on the game is still more realistic than it would be in real life, but I'm just saying that other cars are even more OP in comparison, and as cool as that may seem, it just doesn't seem fair, because the 458 deserves to be used more, and if it were quicker, I think it would get more use. Definitely from me personally, and from a lot of the people that I usually race with. As a track car though, it's a brilliant machine. It has remarkably good handling, and in terms of sheer spec, it's got, as I mentioned just now, a naturally aspirated engine. It's a 4.5 litre V8, mid-mounted, as with most of the best Ferraris. Not necessarily all of them, but most of them. Puts out, as I said, just over 750 horsepower at 10,000 RPM, and it also puts out a decent 480 foot-pounds of torque. It only weighs 1,217 kilos, which is reasonably light, a lot lighter than some others in the class, and puts out 619 horsepower per tonne. And that's pretty decent territory. That can match some GT class race cars even. As far as PP, it sits at, I would say, actually a very reasonable 616 PP fully tuned, and that's actually really good. Often with a car like this, the PP will be a little bit too high for it to be genuinely useful, but this car's actually pretty well suited to that PP level. If it were allowed to have a flat floor, which it unfortunately doesn't, it could be even higher, maybe up around 640 PP. As it is though, it is a fantastic circuit race car for multiple PP levels, for anything between say 550 and 600 PP and anything in between on Gran Turismo 6. The price is also pretty good. It costs 283,000 credits, which within the SuperSport class is one of the more expensive models. That's still far less than most supercars, and considering that it can tussle with supercars around many circuits, that is pretty good value. Now, should you buy one? Well, it's fairly obvious. Of course you should. If you're not a fan of the car, you probably won't buy one regardless of what I say. If you are a fan of the 458, as many people seem to be, I am pleased to say that you won't be disappointed with it. The top speed's a little bit disappointing, but realistically, in most situations on Gran Turismo 6, it is a very good car. It looks good, it has good visual modification options, it sounds good, it has a fantastic looking interior, and it is a brilliant handling car. The acceleration is also great, and for the money, I'd recommend checking it out. But that's it for this episode overall. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.